Lists are a fabulous way to keep track of things. And in this nugget, you and I will learn that many of the skills that we learned in working with document libraries that store files, we can still use many of those same techniques and options as we're working with lists. And then after the demonstration, you can practice this hands-on in our hands-on labs. Let's begin. Now, lists are fantastic. There's so many different types of lists in SharePoint. Maybe we want to have a contact list that we can share in our SharePoint environment. Or how about a calendar, which is also a type of list. Or a task list of those items that we want to do or need to do. Or perhaps we have a discussion board, which again is just another type of list that keeps information in it. We could have a list for issue tracking. For example, there may be a service desk, the calls come in, they put the ticket in as an incident, and they track it. And that's yet another example of a list. We could use surveys that can be stored and the results kept as lists. We could have links, sort of like a bookmarks bar, but we could share a list of favorite or promoted links. We could also create and use custom lists as well and have the columns look exactly the way that we want to have them look so that we can keep and sort and organize the information that we want to keep in those lists. Now, earlier on in this course, we demonstrated a few of these, including the survey and the calendar. But all of these would fall into the general category of lists. And in SharePoint 2016, what they're calling everything these days in the SharePoint environment is they're referring to them as apps. And that's probably a good idea because they're providing functionality. Yes, behind the scenes, perhaps they are a quote-unquote list. But when we start customizing the look and feel and how users interact with it, for example, like a discussion board or a calendar, indeed, they do become more app-like. So in this nugget, I wanted to mention a few types of lists. So we've done that. I also wanted to mention how we create a list. We're going to do that by adding an app. And that'll give us the option for using one of the pre-built templates, for example, calendar or task list, or issue tracking or survey, or we can select custom and do our own free-form list. Very much like document libraries, if we go to a list, we go to a settings, we can do things such as change the name, add a link to the quick launch area, we could delete the list, and so forth. And if we do delete a list, very similar to a document library, if we want to restore it, we go to the recycle bin and we can restore it from the recycle bin. So in our hands-on lab environment, we'll start off on our Windows 10 client machine and we'll click on Chrome with the icon down here in the taskbar. That automatically takes us to srv1.nuglab.com in our lab environment, and we'll log on as administrator with our lab password of capital NUGGET exclamation mark 23. So here we are at the top level site for Acme, and regarding creating some additional lists, let's go ahead and use them right here in the top level site. So to add the lists as applications, we'll simply go ahead and click on the gear icon near the upper right, and from the drop down, we will select Add an App to add the application. So on my screen here in the noteworthy section, we have the custom list, we have the task list that we could add, and if we scroll down, we'll have some examples of templates that we could use for other types of lists as well, including we have a link list, we have an announcements list, a contact list, a calendar, which is also behind the scenes a list. And one of the giveaways is if it has a little picture of a folder, that's an example of some type of a document library. And if it doesn't have that folder, it's very likely some type of a list. And if we scroll down further, the list, pardon the pun, goes on. So effectively, this is a list of apps to show us the list of apps that we can install and configure. All right, so let's go ahead and scroll back up to the top. And let's go ahead and create a task list just by clicking on the link for tasks right here. So we'll give it a name, and let's just give it a friendly name such as Acme Tasks. And we can later change the look and feel of that name, but this will help make the URL short for it by having a nice tight name. So we'll click on Create. So we're still on the Acme top level site. And over here we have the icon that represents that new app. So if we want to go to settings for this app, this task list, we can click on the ellipsis. And then from the pop-up, we'll click on Settings. And here we have a list of settings for this list. Now, you might notice that a lot of these settings look very similar to the settings that we had for document libraries. And they are very similar. So for example, if we wanted to change the list name and add a link over here for the quick launch, we could do that. So let's do that while we're right here in the settings for this task list. So we'll call it Acme Task List 1, and we'll click the radio button next to Yes for do we want to display a list on the quick launch, and we'll click on Save. So over here on the left-hand side, we now have a link in the quick launch area, which is great. And if we click on it, it'll take us to that task list. So to create a new task, we simply click on the plus symbol next to New Task right here. And let's say the task is call 2 vendors for pricing. And then we can specify a start date, And we can put that in the future a little bit by clicking the arrows to the right. So let's say the start date is May 10th of 2017, and the due date is hopefully sometime after that. Let's say it's October 1st, 2017. And then you can specify who it's assigned to, and then click on Save. And now we have that item inside of our task list. And these items right here are views, very similar to the different views that we could use and create in document libraries. We also have that option here. So if we want to search based on calendar, we can click on the calendar view for this task list. And if we go forward to May, hopefully it'll show us the start date for that. There we go. Call to vendors for pricing starting on May 10th. If we want to go back to the task list, we can use the quick launch over here on the left. And with the ellipses, if we click on the ellipses, we can see a Gantt chart, late task, my tasks. These are all built into this template that we use to create the task list. If we want to modify this view, we can. If we want to go ahead and create a new view, very similar to the document library, we can create a new view with the columns and the organization and the sorting that we want for looking at this data on this list. And let's do an example of one more. We'll click on the gear icon and let's go ahead and add an app. And this time, let's go ahead and add a simple custom list. So we'll click on custom list here. We'll call it Acme Custom. Click on create. Then we'll hover over that new list in the site contents and click on the ellipsis and then click on settings from the pop-out. And once again, we have lots of options similar to what we had with document libraries, including changing the name, the navigation. We could save this list as a template and then use it to create future lists. And just to clean this up a little bit, I will change the list name and the navigation just to make it a little bit more readable for our users. I'll add the navigation link over in the quick launch area and click save. This is also where we would go to delete the list right here as well in the settings of this list. So if we go to the custom list by clicking in the quick launch area, here we have a very generic list. And if we wanted to edit this list, we can click on the list tab in the upper left-hand corner. That brings up the list ribbon. And here if we wanted to, for example, create a new column in this list, we simply click on create column. So let's create a column called lives in Oregon, and we'll make it a yes/no box. We'll scroll down and we'll go ahead and click on OK. So now in our custom list, it has a title and it also has a lives in Oregon column. So if we added an item by clicking on the plus symbol for new item, we can have Bob the user and lives in Oregon. When we created that column, it said, what's the default answer? I said yes. So there's a check in the checkbox and we'll click on save. If Bob didn't live in Oregon, we could simply remove it and then click on save. And if we wanted to delete a list, if we went back to the site contents, and let's go ahead and choose the Acme task list one. If we click on the ellipsis, and then click on the link for settings, and then specify that we want to delete the list, and then click OK to confirm it, that list is now gone. However, if we wanted to restore it, we simply go to the recycle bin. So here under site contents in the upper right hand corner, we have an option for recycle bin. There's also an option right below site contents for recycle bin. Either one's great. We'll click on recycle bin. Here's our Acme task list that I want to restore. And this is kind of fun. All these other lists that I had down here were lists that I was doing some testing with earlier before I started creating this nugget. So they indeed are created and deleted, and they'll show up in your lab as well, but you don't need to restore them. They're just for practice. So let's go ahead and with the check next to Acme task list 1, we'll go ahead and click on restore selection. We'll click on OK. We'll go back to our site contents, and there's our task list restored. If we wanted to add a link back over to the quick launch, we'd go ahead and select the ellipsis once again, go to settings, and then click on the navigation link to add that link over on the left back in. And that makes it a little bit easier for the users of the site to access that task list because there's a link over in the quick launch area on the left. In this nugget, we did 3 basic things. Number 1, we identified that there are several different types of lists, and we're going to implement them as an app. Second, we identified how to go to the settings of a list by going to site contents, click on the ellipsis, and then clicking on settings. And third, we identified that in the settings area for a list is where we would delete the list, and we can use the recycle bin to restore it back if we want that list back. So now, my friend, it is your turn. Go ahead and launch the link to the right if you're logged on from a computer to the CBT Nugget site and launch the hands-on lab associated with this nugget and have some fun reinforcing what we learned in this video. Meanwhile, I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.